Melanie Sodka, welcome back to the show. It's so good to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric. It has been a while, and I am thrilled. And thank you for the grace of our mishap last time. And you created a beautiful post from that.
Oh, I appreciate it. It was just such a great perspective of I was sitting here kind of waiting for you, thinking she's not going to show up. But this isn't the experience I had with Melanie before and what's going on. And you had a little crisis with a friend and you made the right decision. I'll get to Eric in 5 or 10 minutes. I gotta finish this conversation. So I'm grateful that you did what you did. Speaking of gratitude, we start the show. I don't know that we did this the last time you were on the show. We start the show the same way every week. What is the one thing that you are most grateful for today?
I am grateful for growth, like personal growth, because it there's been since we spoke last, Eric, too, there's just been so much personal growth and just so much work that I have dedicated to myself. And, sometimes that feels selfish, but it's not, because I'm able to show up so much differently with so much more capacity, and I'm able to be productive and really honor my values so much better than 2 years ago. And so I am definitely sitting in a bunch of gratitude for personal growth, and the people around me who allowed me to do that, right? That required support too.
I absolutely love that. I imagine that through the growth that you've been through over the last couple of years, you show up to your friends and to your family and to your acquaintances in a much better spot to serve them
Yes.
because you've taken care of yourself.
Yes. Absolutely.
All right. I feel like we recorded half the podcast before we started airing the podcast.
Not always the case.
Yeah, it is actually, and it's great. But before we dig into capacity and the gala that you're hosting later this year, I want to know your story. And I think that'll ease into the gala, but tell us your story. What makes Melanie Melanie?
Boy. Yeah, I would say that this is in the book too. It's a story about how, grief really created an identity or carved the path of my identity. And I didn't realize that until I was like 40. I'm 46 right now. So I passed was recorded in 2024. So yeah, at 46 years old, I'm sitting in this new reframe of like how I show up in the world is kind of the work that I've done. I attribute that quite a bit to my 6-year-old self. And my 6-year-old self, I experienced a lot of death, and particularly my brother. So my brother was born, and we didn't know at the time, when he came to this world, that he had trisomy 13. And so 40 years ago, this was something where doctors were like, we have no idea, what to do with this and what this is. And so he passed away, about 4 or 5 hours after he graced us on this earth. Again, back then, grief was something that there wasn't a lot of support for. People didn't know how to approach it, right? We didn't have these here's what to say, here's what not to say, here are these grief support groups, online books. Like, there wasn't anything like that. And so as someone who thought she was going to become a sister, I basically went home, without a brother, and as an only child, and watched, and witnessed my family go through this trauma. And so not having grieved, not knowing how to grieve, 40 years later, I'm here and I'm like, my brother Gregory just gave me a gift, because what did grief do for me and not to me? And really carve this personality for me to be this, just this joyful kid who wanted to make everybody happy. This person who just wanted to create peace, who wanted to be generous, who wanted to connect with people. And I just, it was just something that I had reflected on, and that I wanted to, I guess, just share with the world that grief is heavy. Yes, we all carry it around. It doesn't go away. But how can we process it? How can we carry it around so it doesn't feel like a 50 pound stack of rocks. And some days it just feels like, it's a little brooch on your shirt, or it's a lighter type of like pack sack, it's there. That's where kind of it came from me. And then it led into other things. It allowed me to write the book. It allowed me to create a gala that we're going to talk about. And so that was just that was a really big piece of my life that I am happy to honor now.
Okay. So I knew you had loss and I asked you to share it on our show. And I don't know how well we've stayed connected over the last 2 years. So I wrote a book called You Are Enough. It came out in October of 2023. And a lot of the grief that I went through was the not death, but the loss, the estrangement of our now 23-year-old daughter. We've not spoken in 7 years. And I hid that from the world for the first 4 years. And what I learned in writing the book, first of all, and I imagine you can attest to this, the healing that you go through and putting those feelings, those emotions, those things that are way deep in your heart that all of a sudden, like a little nugget comes out, and then you got to deal with all of it.
Yes.
It was so healing to write the book. But in sharing that, what I realized is I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only person that is suffering the grief that I thought I was suffering alone. In addition to that, Melanie, it is July of 2024 when we record this, and we lost a baby to trisomy 18. He, Nash, would be about 2 months old right now. It's such a wild thing that nobody talks about. We did not have a stillbirth. We had a miscarriage, sort of a late stage miscarriage. And you know me on social media, I don't hide anything. So I started to talk about it, and the women and the men that came out of the woodworks that talked about their suffering and their miscarriage or their stillborn baby. And it was like nothing, nobody had ever, this was not a world I was in. And the emotions 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later, just they're raw as they are that day. But to your point, and we're a few months removed from this, I feel like I've embraced it in a way that I can share it with others. Definitely, May was a very difficult month because he was due in May. But now I can share that story to give others the realization that they're not alone.
Absolutely. I know, and I'm sorry for your loss, and I was aware of that, and that's when we had reached out.
Oh, that's right.
And yeah, and I think again, it's I understand that not everybody is able to process and to talk about it. And I was very careful because you as a parent losing a child, I'm a sibling. I didn't obviously didn't carry the child, so I needed to make sure that I was also protecting my parents, very private people as well. But that's what took me a long time too, is that it's I have a story to share, and that's part of my life, and it's part of my healing. And one of the catalysts, and I think this is where people get broken open if they don't process grief, is my grandmother was my grief partner, because I really didn't have anybody to grieve with, because we didn't know how to do this. We didn't know, and I was 6, and who knew what that was like. And when she was my grief partner, so I would talk and ask questions, and then she passed away, and I cracked wide open. And that's where I was like, I needed intervention. I needed, because everything just came flooding back, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to deal with it. And so I went to therapy, and I went through a depression, and I had to get help from my doctor. And again, that healing and that surrendering to the grief, to go through it, to process it, was something that I'm grateful for. And just to help people reframe grief and to support people, and really destigmatizing therapy and really bringing community together around grief, to really, there's different types of grief. Everybody feels it differently. Everybody has a story, even to prepare for grief. I was with people who were like, oh, I don't have anything, just not grieving anything. And I said, that's okay. And you're blessed then if you're not grieving anything. I said that there's also this preparation for grief, like preparing for your parents to die, preparing for the inevitable. Like that's also something that I think is really not discussed enough. And I think that that's an important piece. So yeah, it's been a journey.
It is wild. So folks got divorced when I was like 5, maybe 6. I went through some of the same dots that many of the listeners have gone through, some of the sort of dots on the timeline. I didn't have anybody to grieve with. I sort of internalized it, not because my parents didn't offer it. It just wasn't a resource that I felt like I wanted or needed, or to your point, we're basically the same age. I didn't even know it was accessible, right?
Yeah.
And then I went through my own divorce 22, 23 years ago, and I opted not to go to any sort of therapy. And I didn't process much. In fact, the guy I was just on the phone with, a wild story. We lost contact for a long time. And we lost contact around my divorce because when people get divorced, friends feel like they have to choose. He was at a loss as to who to choose. So he just walked out of everybody's life. And here we are 20 some odd years later reconnecting. I will say, to affirm what you're saying, going through the grief and addressing it while you're navigating it is one of the single greatest things that I've ever done. You know, we're 7 years removed from our relationship with our oldest, and it's one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. But I wake up each day with a very different perspective on that relationship, my hopes for that relationship, the reality of what may or may not happen, very different than I did 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Sure. Sure.
So
It,
talk to us about this gala. I feel like we're on the grief train, so I
yeah,
feel like we
yeah.
should stay there. But you're
Sure.
hosting a gala in October. It's the first of its kind. Tell us about it.
I don't know if your listeners like wake up in the middle of the night with ideas, but like I'm one of those, right? I'm like, oh my God. After I had gone through this, gone through the grief process that I was dealing with the loss of my grandmother, and I've been going through therapy, I just woke up with so much gratitude where it's like, I had the means, I had the support, I had the access to therapy to help me feel good. And this, God, like this relates directly to capacity because once I was able to heal that part of myself and process it, I just had this like whole renewed capacity that was held hostage once by the grief, right? And so I just woke up with so much gratitude where I was like, wow, how can I do this for other people? And I honestly woke up, Eric, in the middle of the night and I was like, Good Grief Gala, wrote it down, went back to sleep. Because I was like,
Wow.
I need to do this. So I was like, I'm going to just host a gala. I had no clue how this was going to go down. I had no clue, really at that point, like what it took to, like I said, planning a wedding. It's like 100 times more intricate than planning a wedding. Like there's so many more details and all these moving parts. You have guest speakers, you have silent auctions, you have like, there's all these things. But I had, again, the capacity. I had a vision and it was like so aligned with my heart. It was so aligned with what I wanted to do. I just wanted to raise money to be able to help other women at this point in time to access therapy. And I had a great therapy provider and they were online. They had a great matching process. So I had a great partner there. I hired an event planner because I couldn't do it alone. And all of a sudden, community. You just bring in community. You just start talking about it. And when that alignment is there, you don't have to convince people. They see it, they feel it, and they want to be part of it. And as soon as people were like, whoa, this is so unique, nothing has really been done like this before, then I started to pick up steam and felt more confident about it. So we have a comedian coming to this Good Grief Gala, and she's the keynote because she talks about her mental health journey. She talks about grief. She talks about all these things that are like taboo and stigmatized in society. And she brings laughter, and she thinks the best medicine is laughing at ourselves. And that was the first speaker I booked because I was like, this is the tone I want this event to have. I want us to be able to laugh together.
So outside of laughter, and I would agree with that, outside of laughter, what are other tools that our listeners, myself, can leverage right now? I've got therapy, I've got laughter. What are things like practical things that I can do tomorrow to start working through some of these things?
Whoa, it's such a unique, personalized journey. And I don't think there's one, there's not one recipe or a tool. There's not a one size fits all with this because, again, everybody's has a different story, and everybody has a different depth of where this is buried, right? So it's not going to be like a 1-2 shovel. It could be like a you could be shoveling the stuff out for so long. There's a couple of resources, like even just acknowledging that there's a tension, and Gabor Mate is a amazing author, and he talks about when there's tension, it means it needs attention. Your tension needs
Mm.
attention. And he was like, where is that in your body, and what is it? And just give it attention, and to understand, acknowledge that there might be something that you're grieving. I know that over the years, if you look at patterns and behaviors, what is the thing that you might be doing to sabotage yourself or to fill the void? I know I did a lot of shopping, and I would just shop and spend too much money. That's how I would cope. As soon as something would trigger me and I would get upset, or so, I would seriously run to the mall and I would just retail therapy it. And, some people drink. Some people, they narcotics, there's a lot of different, there's self-harm. There's a lot of things that people do. And I think it's like, again, take a moment to really check, what is it that you might be feeling? Is there tension in your body? Is there something that you're doing that's out of control? And really stop to look at that. Like, why are you doing that?
Well, I think it's really important. I'll give you a silly example. I think it's really important to acknowledge that we all go through grief differently
Mhm.
based on our life's experience. Sort of an aside, but slightly adjacent. My 8-year-old son came downstairs this morning. He looked at me and he was fine. He was not quite his bubbly self at 8 o'clock in the morning. Said, "Are you excited about summer camp today?" He goes, "Yeah, but Dad, can we go to Target tonight?" I was like, "Yeah, we can go to Target." "Why?" He goes, "I need a white undershirt so we can do tie-dye because I'm gonna miss it at camp today." And I said, "What do you mean you're gonna miss it?" And he goes, "Yeah, I just don't have a white undershirt and we don't have time to go buy one." And I went through PTSD of my entire childhood. Like, the world stops. I'm going to reschedule my 8 o'clock in the morning, because if it was like sports day at school when I was a kid, I love you, Mom, because she's definitely listening. My mom always forgot these things, and I'd show up in a t-shirt and shorts, and everybody else would be in a basketball jersey. And so and I was like, "Jen, you need to," she goes, "I know, I got it. Don't worry." I'm like, little PTSD on my side. She goes, "I knew right when I woke up that we needed to do this." And it was less about it for my son and more about
Great.
it
Good for
for me.
you.
But in the same capacity, my wife and I grieved the loss of Nash. We grieved the estranged relationship with our oldest. We all grieve differently,
Yes,
and we really need to acknowledge that.
absolutely. We do. And again, it's taking a pause sometimes, and just really, and it's painful because, when you take a pause, like, you don't, it's not like take action on it immediately, but just acknowledging it. It's like anything. When you shine a light on something, that's not so positive in your life, it loses power because you're staring at it, and you're taking away its power because you're acknowledging it, and you have a choice in that moment, in that acknowledgement, whether you do something about it or not.
I think you hit the nail on the head. One of the things that I think we can do in the grieving process, and I'd love your feedback because you're talking about acknowledgement, and my mind went here. April 17th is a really hard day in my world because that's the day that our daughter walked out. And there's a couple of people that I know put it on their calendar because I get a phone call every year on that day. "Hey man, just checking in. I hope everything's okay. I know it's a difficult day." And I think it's important for others to acknowledge, "Hey, I've not experienced what you're going through, but I'm sorry that you're going through." And I think as a leader, having a boss, you know, April 17th, my boss walks up to me the week before and says, "Hey, I know next week's difficult. Why don't you take Wednesday off?" Just something so simple as acknowledging my business partner lost his oldest in December. That date needs to go on my calendar so I can acknowledge that. And
Mhm.
I think we can do a better job as a society of caring well for others through their grief.
I love that you said that because this is where, again, we can do better as acknowledging it, but we can also um, do better to create a culture of like a safer culture to come up and say, hey, this is a hard day for me. A lot of people wouldn't say that to their bosses. A lot of people wouldn't share that. But again, like in order to be able to do that, how do we create the culture? How do we create a safe space to be like, this is a hard day for me. I might show up a little differently, you know, and that's how we can teach people. We can teach people how to treat us too, right? We can teach people how to show that empathy. But I love that, yeah.
But again, to your point, you don't need to get wildly vulnerable. I'm a
No.
pretty open book. You're clearly an open book, but just walking
Yes.
into your boss's office and saying, hey, I'm probably a little off this week. I'm going through some stuff at
Yeah.
home. I don't want to talk about what it is, but if you recognize that I'm a hair off this week,
Yeah.
it's because I am.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I we could talk about grief all day long. I was
Sure.
sharing with you in advance of us actually starting the show that you're easily a top 5 for me over the 150 episodes that I've had because you've totally changed my perspective on how to say no to somebody. This idea of capacity. And I found you through another one of my top 5, Leanne Davey, who I think does brilliant work on conflict and conflict resolution and the purpose behind conflict. But she said, you need to talk to the capacity creator. And I thought, what the hell is a capacity creator? I never told you this. I envisioned you were like an organizer, like you're going to come clean my closet or something
Oh
and
gosh, that's a
create.
story.
So, talk to me about this idea of creating capacity and what that work looks like.
Yes, it is. I love this work. I won't really, I don't know when this podcast will be released. The book is called Diary of a Functioning Burnout:
Mm,
How to Honor Your Capacity. And I am, for me in my life, like I have a high propensity for work. I have a lot of capacity, therefore I love to do multiple things. I'm not necessarily a linear person. I know that I need to employ those strategies in my life. Capacity came to me after like my second bout of burnout. My first bout of burnout was in my 20s. We didn't talk about burnout. We just talked about like when we were in corporate, you work the 14-hour days, you stay at nighttime, like you work. That's just corporate culture. If you're in or you're out. But, and part of my book, burnout became something in my 20s. It was more of a mindset, and it was more of that mental health that again wasn't necessarily talked about. And I'll share with you just this one little diary entry that I include in the book is that it was so done at work. I was so burnt out, but didn't have that language that I would be driving to work wishing to get in a car accident so that I could just rest in the hospital. And when you go to those dark depths, there's a lot of guilt and shame. And you're like, what the hell am I thinking about that for? Like, why am I even there? It's because I was so done and I didn't know how to get out. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to just like stop. And so that was in my 20s. In my 30s, it happened again. I was like just doing all these things and just like, just being part of all these things and growing a business. And then I started to experience physical symptoms like bloody noses, hair loss, skin changes, whatever. And then my doctor was like, you're done. You're written off. And I tried to negotiate with my doctor. I was like, are you sure? Like maybe I can just take 1 week and not a
can
month.
do
And she,
more. I got this.
like, I can heal really quickly. And she's like, are you serious? So anyways, while I was there, it came to me that I was like, whoa, this is what burnout is like. And capacity, like the word capacity was just like churning inside of me. And I'm like, whoa, this is something that I'm sure other people struggle with. How can I help? How do we create more capacity in our lives for things that we love? And how do we say no to the things that are just not serving us or are misaligned? And so that's where all of that was born. Time versus capacity is different. Time is like you do it or you don't in the specified time, you achieve it or you don't. But capacity is the quality of energy in which you accomplish those tasks within that given time. That given time. And that is where I work with people to understand the quality of the capacity, how to build it, how to take care of it, how to honor it, how to audit the capacity so that it is a burnout prevention method. And so that is what I end up teaching people to do, individually and within organizations. Because look, like burnout is huge. It's still a massive issue. It still costs companies millions, billions of dollars all over the world. So if we can avoid that and we can have, these conversations you and I were talking about being a little bit vulnerable, how can we instill that language to be vulnerable, to talk about our workloads, to talk about our mental health without being pushed to an EAP program? Like, oh, you weren't out, here you go, just go and access the EAP program. Well, it's too late. You've lost that person. They're likely not going to come back. This is what capacity creation is all about.
All right, so this is what you do for a living, but I've got you on my podcast, so I'm going to ask for some free advice while you're giving it out. I think one of the things that I notice about myself, and I've got a handful of friends that I've observed this in as well, because they're on the other side of it, is I get a lot of phone calls, a lot of text messages and emails. I talked to a guy yesterday. Hey, I'm writing a book, and I have actually I've written the book, and I have no idea what to do next. And I don't know him. We met through a mutual friend. The easy answer would have been, I just don't have capacity. But the one thing I don't talk about very often is I am a people pleaser. So Tim sends me a text, hey, what are the odds? And then I end up giving him what he needs. And I'm grateful that I could, and serving him well. But while I was doing that, I could have, should have, or otherwise needed to be doing something else. I took one of these calls the other day. I had my daughters in the car, and I took one of these calls, and I thought, what the hell am I doing? Like, time is short. They're going to move out. They're going to go to college. I should be spending this hour in the car with them, embracing the opportunity. And the idiot that I am took the phone call. I don't know how to say no. I don't know how to say I'm at capacity. So I know I'm not the only one.
No.
I know there's a million people I could call and ask right now, hey, would you help me move? Would you help me? Can I borrow this? What's some advice that you would offer me or others listening to really embrace this idea of capacity?
It's interesting. I want to ask you a question back before I answer that. And what were you worried about? Had you said?
I don't know. Well, so that's a really interesting question. I don't know that I'm worried about saying no. I think the reason I say yes is because on my journey in particular, well, even the tech world that I have spent so many years in, but the podcast, the keynote speaking that I do, the writing of the book, I called a lot of people and I asked a lot of the same questions that this guy did. And I think I can get Melanie on the phone. She'll give me an hour of her time next week if I need it. And I'm so grateful for that. I feel a sense of obligation to give back the way that others have given to me.
Right. Yeah. And that makes sense. There's a sense of obligation. So what is the opposite of that? So had you said no, what are the ramifications, or what would be the feeling?
This is funny. I think of two answers. Had I said no, he'd have probably Googled it and saved me a half an hour. So ultimately, he would have found his answers, and I would have been, dare I say, I'm trying to think of another word. I can't. I would have been disappointed in myself. Like, I can pull this off, which leads me to a place that I know I'm forging ahead to if I don't slow down, which is burnout, which is losing my hair and having bloody noses. But I do worry about burnout. I worry less about burnout, and I worry more about Am I doing the things that really matter? Like, could I go, and listen, I hope that guy doesn't listen to the show. I was really grateful I had the time. But I could have otherwise. My son's 18. He's going to college in a couple of weeks. He asked me at 10:30 last night if I wanted to watch a movie. I wanted to go to bed. I needed to go to bed. I needed to make the sacrifice of sleep to go spend an extra 90 minutes with my son.
For sure.
No regrets.
Right.
But I miss opportunities like that when I say yes to guys like, hey, can you help me? Or I'm trying to get more keynotes. Well, give me some coaching. And I don't want to burn out, but I also want to focus on the things that matter.
Yes. And I think this is not a switch that we can like turn on, tomorrow to be, perfect at capacity management. I think this, like, there's stages, right? And I think what you're going through right now is like, I think the old you, and if I can put myself in that same situation, would be like, yeah, no problem, I'll pull it off. Like that was my mindset. It was like, I'll pull it off. I know I can. I always do. I kind of regret it a little bit, but as we get older, things start to change, perspectives start to change, and so do our energy levels and your awareness now. So there's this new dialogue where it's not like I can pull it off, it's still there, but then you're going to be like, at the expense of what? And I think like
Yep.
that's that awareness where, and as we age, we get wiser. So in that moment, you answered your own question. You could have said, hey, I would love to. Why don't you check out this Google site first? And then like, if you have any other questions, just text me. And maybe we're not putting them off completely. So there's still a bit of that people pleaser. I have it too, but it's like you directed him to a very valuable resource without sucking up your time. And that's just as helpful to people.
It's interesting. Andy Andrews, I'm not sure if you know the name. Andy's a very successful author. He gave me a beautiful cover quote for my book, and I'm extremely grateful for his mentorship and friendship. And I went out to his office for a day while I was writing my book. He had no reason to say yes. I went out, I spent the day with him and his staff. I went on his podcast. I learned everything about writing a book and was incredibly grateful for that. But as we walked back in from lunch, I saw this whiteboard, and it was literally a whiteboard of all of the questions that I would have asked or had already asked.
Yes.
Paper, cover quotes, all of these things. And I said, were you guys actually preparing for me? These are all my questions. And he goes, no, we're putting a PDF together because if we get one question every day, I'm writing a book. Where do I start? And we want to be able to answer people.
Yes.
But we don't have capacity to be able to do it in a one-on-one scenario. So I would imagine that's the case for most of us. Our expertise, whatever it is siloed into 1, 2, maybe 3 different things. And if we can just use Canva and put a PDF together and say, well, let me send you this.
I think that takes capacity to do too. So now you got to create a thing to give to someone, but again, like you got to measure at the time. But yeah, it's. I think that the more refined we get with age in our business, and the more people come to us with specific requests, perhaps we could be ready with quick resources to send people to, so that they understand that you don't have an hour to give. That's just not where you're at in your life anymore. And that you have just a valuable resource that would be great for them just as much as speaking to them, for sure. The other thing I want to share with you, Eric, too, and your listeners is when people are overwhelmed, one of the tools that I give people is called the 3x3. And it's all about identifying the roles, goals, and controls, right? And so when people are just like, I have all these things to do, I play all these roles in my life, I'm like, okay, we're only going to focus on 3. I'm like, I can't, because I'm like, no, we're going to focus on 3. It doesn't mean 4, 5, and 6 are not important. It means that top 3 are the most important. And so what are those roles? And then the goals are like, what is my primary goal? So for example, my partner is one of those roles. I play a partner. I'm a spouse to somebody. And that's important to me right now because I feel like I'm not spending enough time. The goal is like, how do we reconnect if we were communication? So I make a goal around that. The control is like, how do I know I'm going to be successful at the end of 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks by making this a priority? And that means that going through that exercise, if it's not in the top 3, it is a no. That's it. And, and that's where I teach people too. I give them scripts, like how can we say no to all of these incremental requests, but really focusing on those 3 And I know it. I know it from experience. If you do not focus on, we're only wired for three things, by the way, to remember three things, to focus on three things, right? If you don't, then like if everything's important, nothing is important.
Nothing's important.
We
Yep.
know that. So that's another quick tool that I take people through just to really insulate the things that are most important. Like father is on yours and that time, like then every incremental request is a no. Maybe it's a not right now. How about go to my calendar? Something.
I think for me, so two things. People ask me all the time, why do you do a podcast? What's the purpose? And I often say I get to talk to brilliant people that I otherwise, I mean, you're a great example. You and I never would have met. I never would have met the founder of Reebok or NFL players or anything like that. In this case, I get free advice. You, the listener, get really brilliant free advice. I think my biggest takeaway on the capacity front is just this idea, and it took me all the way back to being in Orange Beach, Alabama with Andy Andrews, but there's some pretty standard questions that I get asked. I could put not a marketing slick, but I could just put it on paper
Do
or
it.
even in a note on my iPhone that I can just say, hey, let me text you all the things you need to be mindful of when writing a book. Or I have a great example. I have a call this afternoon trying to help one of the suppliers in the tech community start a podcast. I'm happy to help, but I take that call. I take that call once a week.
Right. Yeah, it's a tough one. You're right. It's almost like at that stage, if you are an expert in an area or a few, what are those common questions, putting together a resource for people and sending out, I think that's a gift. Because otherwise, like you can be charging for your time, but then you start to weigh out, like, is it worth it? And then you're prioritizing money over. So it's not a perfect equation. But putting together a document to give to people to start from is huge. That's all they need, right? They can Google it too. But when it comes from you, I think like that is still an extension of yourself and helping. And you're teaching people how, what to expect from you. You're teaching people the boundaries that you have too. I think that's really important. Being a yes person, being a people pleaser, people expect you to say yes all the time. Call Eric, he'll do it. Just set up time. He's such a good guy. He's so nice. He's so generous. He's amazing. He's brilliant. Call him. He'll say yes. And then that all of a sudden is the reputation. So we're always teaching and training people how to treat us. And I feel like we have the responsibility and the power to reverse that narrative if we can.
Well, and what's so interesting about it is the Googling of the book. The reason I've always wanted to take those calls is because writing a book and finding out that you have to put it not just on Amazon, but you got to work with Ingram Spark, and then you got to have 5 different covers because hard copy and paperback with Amazon is different than Ingram, is different than Audible.
God, I'm in that process now.
I'm happy to help you. I'm putting a PDF today. Putting a PDF together later today. But all I want to do is help people like you save the time, because there wasn't a document out on the internet. I read countless websites, and some of them went against, one said this and one said that. So I'm going to tell you what I experienced, but I could put that together in a half hour. In the half hour I spent with Tim, I could put that together and I could send it to 4,000 people.
Exactly. And I think that's what we do is we scratch our own itch, right? That's how we create businesses. But then when, people come to us, when we put ourselves in this expert category, or we're seen as these experts, I think it's important to consolidate, the information so it's easily digestible. Because you're right, anybody can Google and chat GPT all they want. However, we're still no less overwhelmed, than before we went there. So yeah, it's not like we have all the answers, but if we can give people the pathway, or we can give people a trusted source to start from, that is a gift. And that's what my book does too, right? We talk about auditing your capacity, and then we talk about optimizing it, and then we talk about honoring it. And so there are tools kind of sprinkled in. There are stories, diary entries from when I was like, in the burnout phase, so people can relate. So there's a lot of different pieces in there that will act like your book, and now like your new PDFs. Hey, check out chapter, 3. It talks about so-and-so.
Right. I wanted this book 2 years ago when we first met. When does the book come out?
We are, oh God, like I'm in the throes right now. So my early readers are reading it, and my editor will have it in his hands end of July, but it is set to come out October 10th. Like I will have a copy of that final book in my hands and I will be able to finally call myself an author. I will not call myself an author until that book is here in my hands. I'm a writer right now. So October 10th, it will be out.
I will tell you, someone said this to me, and it was a wildly impactful statement. I'm not sure why, but no one can ever take that title away from you. You will have always written a book. And it is, having written a book, it is an absolutely it's a daunting task and an incredible journey. Now, the one thing I won't do is tell my wife when I start my second book, because it's a story for another podcast, but
It's a podcast on its own.
it is. Yeah, it's probably a whole series of podcasts.
Yeah.
So you and I can talk for days. Actually, before we go there, I almost forgot. I don't know if you listen to the podcast. Let's pretend that you do, and you know this question is coming. You get asked a lot of questions. Oftentimes, it's a lot of the same questions. What's one question you wish people would ask you, but they don't?
Yes, there's a lot of those ones. You know, it's like what you asked me in the beginning. Like, how are you? Like, how are you really? And I wish people asked that more often, because then it would open up conversation to be like, I'm going to just tell you, I'm not going to tell you my whole life story, but I'm going to tell you that today was a great day. Here's why. Or I'm going to tell you today was not a good day, and here's why. And I'm just watching a couple of videos on that. And it's like, if we can really tell people, hey, like today wasn't a good day, instead of like, yeah, great, excellent, everything's wonderful. I think we would connect more. And I think we would really be able to be more vulnerable and heal ourselves and have stronger, deeper connections. So it's like, hey, how are you? No, how are you really? Giving people permission to like just say, if something super fun happened, giving people permission to say like, I gotta share with you like a huge win. I'm gonna tell you what happened today, for real. 30 seconds, a minute. Or it's pretty shitty, we got bad news.
The way for me, and then we'll wrap up the show, the only way that I've been able to successfully ask the follow-up, how are you really, is by putting the phone down. Because so often, and I've had really great interactions with the barista, with the person at the cashier at the big box store, and all these, but it's because I've chosen. I'm going to share it now, but I met a guy. I was sitting outside of a cigar bar the other day, all by myself, just working, waiting to pick up some kids. He walks in, gives me a hard time. He's like, "You shouldn't be working," because it was like 6:30 at night, and we joked back and forth. And then I shut my laptop when he came out, and he was going to get back in his car and drive home. And I said, "Hey, do you want to have a seat?" And we talked for, I don't know, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, exchanged business cards. He's going to come on the podcast. He's a successful businessman, like all around really good guy. But he shared with me things. I am certain he shared with me things that are not public information about what his plans are, what his future plans are, all based on the backs of, I put my phone down, I shut my laptop, and I was present. So I love the idea of asking. I would only add to that we have to choose to be present in the moment.
I agree. You're right. And it's how we show up. And just the last point on that, like my husband calls me a witch. Not the bad witch. Not the bad witch.
Hey, if your husband is listening, I'm telling you right now, if my wife walks in and I said, "Hey, witch," it's not going to end well. But go ahead. Now everybody's listening.
I know, but he doesn't call me that, like, "Hey, witch," right? But I think it's because I appreciate people asking me how really are you doing, because I want to know how you're really doing. And he calls me a witch because I will, like you said, barista, cashier, whoever it is, so many times I'll be like, "Hey, how are you?" And I think the presence or the eye contact and the body language. People will still be working or doing whatever, but then they'll tell me what's going on, be like, oh, I got some great granddaughter today, or you know what, like I have to go and travel. And my husband's like, oh my God, like why do people end up telling your life story everywhere we go? Like, can't we just get in and get out? And I'm like, I love that. I really do love the extra 2 minutes to connect with that person. Whether I will see them again, maybe not. But that person now got to talk. And I am always like, maybe that person doesn't have an opportunity to truly share. And if they got to share that with me and they're better for it, so am I.
Our significant others need to meet. You and I are a lot alike. My wife's like, why do you ask these people these questions? Why not?
I know my kids too.
Where can people find you? Where can people find your work?
You can find me at Melanie Sodka, like vodka.com. You can find me on Instagram, Capacity Creator. You can go check out goodgriefgala.com. I'm on Instagram as well under the Good Grief Gala. The book will be coming out shortly, and all of that will be on my social channels. You can just email me too. If anybody has any questions or wants to personally reach out, Melanie@capacitycreator.com.
And all of that will be in the show notes. Melanie Sodka. The way in which I remembered to say it was Sodka like vodka. So that sticks. Well done. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Likewise. Thank you so much.